The corridors of Windsor Castle held many secrets. But what former royal guard Thomas Blackwell witnessed that cold November evening would haunt him for years to come. The stone walls seemed to absorb sound that night. Thomas stood at his post near the East Gallery, his polished boots reflecting the dim chandelier light above. 23 years of service had taught him to notice everything while appearing to notice nothing. The skill of invisibility, they called it. But some moments demanded to be seen. It was 8:30 when he heard the footsteps. Quick, purposeful, echoing against ancient stone. Princess Anne appeared from around the corner, her expression carved from ice and determination. Thomas had served during her entire public life, had seen her weather storms that would break lesser souls. But this was different. Her jaw was set. Her eyes blazed with something Thomas had rarely witnessed a mother's, fury wrapped in royal composure. Before you hear what happened next, if you love stories about courage, loyalty, and the hidden moments behind palace walls, make sure you're subscribed. These true moments deserve to be remembered. Thomas heard a second set of footsteps. Lighter, more hesitant Camilla. The queen consort emerged from the adjoining hallway. She wore an elegant evening dress, pearl earrings catching the light. Her face showed surprise at the unexpected encounter. "Anne," Camilla said, her voice carrying its usual warmth. "I didn't expect we need to speak." Princess Anne's words cut through the air like a blade. Now, Thomas felt the temperature in the corridor drop. He remained perfectly still, eyes forward. But his training allowed him to observe everything in his peripheral vision. Camilla's smile faltered. "Of course. Shall we find somewhere more private?" "This will do." The silence that followed pressed against Thomas's eardrums. He could hear his own heartbeat, the distant tick of a grandfather clock 3 rooms away. The slight rustle of fabric as Princess Anne stepped closer. "I've bitten my tongue for months," Anne said, her voice low, but sharp enough to draw blood. "Watched, waited, hoped you would understand the delicate situation without intervention." Camilla's posture stiffened. "I'm not sure what you mean, Catherine." The name hung in the air like an accusation. "The Princess of Wales. My nephew's wife. The future Queen of England." Thomas saw Camilla's hand move to the pearls at her throat, a nervous gesture, poorly disguised. "I've treated Catherine with nothing but—" "Public warmth does not erase private coldness." Anne's interruption was surgical. "You've undermined her at every turn. Small cuts, deliberate slights. A word here, a gesture there. You think because they're subtle, they go unnoticed." The air grew thick with tension. Thomas had witnessed diplomatic incidents, family disagreements, moments of crisis. But this felt different. This felt personal in a way that transcended protocol. Camilla's face flushed. "That's simply not true. If Catherine feels Catherine says nothing because she is gracious, because she was raised to endure with dignity, because she understands her duty." Princess Anne's voice remained controlled, but something dangerous lurked beneath the surface. "But I am not Catherine. I am not bound by her patience." Thomas watched a muscle twitch in Camilla's jaw. "Anne, I think you're misunderstanding. I understand perfectly." Princess Anne stepped forward. The movement was slight, barely perceptible, but it carried the weight of a challenge. Thomas had seen her stare down aggressive photographers, hostile journalists, even armed intruders. This was that same energy, concentrated and aimed. "Let me be absolutely clear," Anne said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow filled the entire corridor. Thomas held his breath. "What princess?" Anne said next would echo through the palace for months to come. "If the Princess of Wales is distressed," Anne said, each word deliberate and measured, "you will answer to me." The silence that followed was absolute. Thomas could hear the blood rushing in his ears. In all his years of service, he had never heard such a direct warning delivered with such controlled fury. Camilla's face went pale. "This is completely inappropriate. What's inappropriate is making a young woman feel unwelcome in her own family." Anne's composure never cracked, which somehow made her words more devastating. "Catherine has given this family 3 heirs. She has served with grace under impossible scrutiny. She has earned respect, not sabotage. I have never don't. The single word stopped Camilla mid-sentence. I've spent my entire life reading people, understanding power dynamics, seeing through pretty lies wrapped in prettier words. You've been at this game long enough to know better. Thomas saw Camilla's hands tremble slightly before she clasped them together. Her rings caught the light symbols of status that suddenly seemed fragile. You're making accusations based on palace gossip, Camilla said, attempting to reclaim her dignity. I've always tried to make Catherine feel last month's garden party.
Anne's interruption was swift.
You deliberately scheduled a conflicting engagement, forcing Catherine to attend alone while you appeared at the children's charity event she'd been planning for months. The press reported it as a scheduling error. Camilla's expression flickered. Just for a moment, but Thomas caught it. The week before that, Anne continued, her voice like a prosecutor presenting evidence. You suggested to the king that Catherine's proposed changes to the foundation might be premature. Those were your exact words. My brother told me himself, I was offering counsel. You were establishing dominance. Anne stepped closer still. And last week, when Catherine was genuinely ill and couldn't attend the state dinner, you made certain everyone knew how disappointed you were, as if she'd chosen illness to inconvenience you. Thomas had heard whispers about these incidents. Palace staff talked when they thought no one important was listening. But hearing them laid out like this, stripped of diplomatic language, was different. It was devastating. Camilla's mouth opened and closed. She looked like someone drowning in shallow water. I've waited decades for this position, Camilla said finally, her voice thick with emotion. Endured ridicule. Survived hatred. Been painted as the villain in a story I never wanted to be part of. I will not be pushed aside by what? Anne's question cut like glass. By a woman who's done everything right? Who married for love and duty both? Who's never put a foot wrong in over a decade of service? The comparison hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. Thomas saw tears forming in Camilla's eyes, though she fought to hold them back. Despite everything, he felt a twinge of sympathy. This was a woman who'd fought for her place, only to find it threatened by someone younger, more beloved, more naturally suited to the role she'd waited so long to claim. You think I'm jealous? Camilla whispered. That's what everyone thinks. I think you're afraid. Anne's voice softened slightly, but the steel remained. Afraid that Catherine's grace makes your journey look graceless. That her natural ease highlights how hard you've had to work for acceptance. That history will be kinder to her than it's been to you. A single tear escaped down Camilla's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, angrily. But that fear does not give you permission to diminish her, Anne continued. Catherine is not your enemy. She never has been. The only person undermining your legacy right now is you. Thomas watched Camilla struggle to compose herself. Her shoulders straightened. Her chin lifted. For a moment, he saw the woman who'd survived decades of public scorn and emerged as queen consort. What do you want from me? Camilla asked, her voice hoarse. I want you to remember what it felt like to be the outsider. Anne's words landed with precision. To be judged unfairly, to have your every move scrutinized and misinterpreted. You know that pain intimately? Camilla flinched as if struck. So stop inflicting it on Catherine. The corridor felt impossibly small. Thomas could smell Camilla's perfume, see the slight tremor in Princess Anne's hands despite her steady voice. Feel the weight of decades of royal drama crystallizing into this single moment. And if I don't? Camilla's question was barely audible, but it carried defiance. Princess Anne's smile was cold enough to frost the windows. Then you'll discover exactly how protective I can be. Thomas had seen Princess Anne face down aggressive stallions without flinching. He'd watched her dismiss death threats with a wave of her hand. But this moment revealed something more dangerous than physical courage. This was the protective fury of someone defending family. You forget, Anne said quietly, that I've been in this family longer than you. I know where every skeleton is buried, every favor owed, every alliance that can be called upon. Camilla's face went from pale to ashen. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you of reality. Anne's voice never rose above conversational level, which somehow made it more chilling. The public adores Catherine. The press protects her. The king loves her like a daughter. William would burn down the monarchy itself before letting anyone harm her. And she paused, letting the weight of unspoken words settle. I have nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Thomas understood the subtext immediately. Princess Anne had spent her life in service without complaint. She'd never sought the spotlight, never courted popularity, never played political games. She was respected precisely because she didn't need to be loved. That made her dangerous in ways Camilla couldn't match. This is absurd, Camilla said, but her voice lacked conviction. Over what? Some perceived slights? Court politics that have existed for centuries? Over a young woman's well-being? Anne's answer was simple and devastating. Over basic human decency. Over remembering that titles and crowns don't exempt us from treating each other with kindness. A door opened somewhere down the corridor. Both women heard it. The moment shattered slightly, reality intruding on their private war. Camilla straightened her dress, touching her pearls again. The king will hear about this conversation. I'm counting on it. Anne smiled without warmth. I plan to tell him myself. Unlike some, I don't operate in shadows. The barb landed. Thomas saw Camilla's jaw clench. You self-righteous. Camilla started, anger finally breaking through her composure. Careful. And single word froze Camilla mid-sentence. You've made mistakes today, but they're still fixable. What you say in the next 10 seconds could change that? Footsteps approached. Both women turned to see a junior staff member round the corner, clipboard in hand. The young woman stopped abruptly, sensing the tension. Your Royal Highness, she stammered, looking at Princess Anne. Apologize for the intrusion. I was looking for, it's fine, Margaret. Anne's voice transformed, instantly warm, measured every inch the professional royal. We were just finishing our conversation. Thomas marveled at the transformation. Seconds ago, Anne had been delivering veiled threats. Now she smiled as if discussing the weather. Margaret nodded uncertainly and hurried away, her footsteps fading into the distance. The mask dropped the moment she disappeared. This isn't over, Camilla said quietly, and agreed. But it could be. That's entirely up to you. You expect me to just what? Apologize? Pretend this confrontation never happened? I expect you to act like the queen you claim to be. Anne's words cut deep. Queen Elizabeth showed kindness to you when many wanted you excluded. She gave you legitimacy when the public screamed against it. She taught you that this institution is bigger than personal grievances. Camilla's eyes glistened. The mention of the late queen clearly struck a nerve. Don't dishonor her memory by making Catherine's life miserable out of insecurity, Anne continued. You're better than that. Or at least, you could choose to be.
That's...
For the first time, Camilla seemed to truly hear what was being said. Her expression shifted from defiant to something more complex. Shame, perhaps mixed with recognition. I never meant she started, then stopped. It's complicated. It always is. Anne's voice softened fractionally. But Catherine didn't create those complications. She inherited them, just like you inherited the consequences of choices made decades ago. The difference is, she's handling her burden with grace. Camilla looked away, staring at the portrait on the wall, a painting of Queen Elizabeth in her coronation robes. The weight of judgment seemed to emanate from those painted eyes. I was where she is once, Camilla said quietly. The outsider trying to find her place. Everyone watching. Everyone waiting for mistakes. Then you should understand better than anyone how isolating that feels. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history and pain. What Catherine sees when she looks at you, Anne said. Her voice, gentler now, is someone who survived. Someone who endured and emerged stronger. She could be your greatest ally, Camilla. If you'd let her. Thomas watched something shift in Camilla's expression. The defensiveness began to crack, revealing exhaustion underneath. I don't know how, Camilla admitted, her voice breaking slightly. Every time I try to reach out, I feel this wall, like she's waiting for me to strike, because you've given her reason to wait. The truth hung between them, brutal and undeniable. But what happened next would surprise Thomas even more than the confrontation itself. Princess Anne did something Thomas never expected. She reached out and gently touched Camilla's arm. The gesture was brief, almost tentative, but it carried weight beyond words. Camilla stared at Anne's hand as if it might disappear. "I'm not your enemy either," Anne said quietly. "I'm doing this precisely because I believe you're capable of being better than you've been these past months." Camilla's eyes filled with tears again. This time, she didn't fight them. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "Tired of proving myself. Tired of wondering if I'm enough. Tired of feeling like I'm failing before I've even begun." The confession hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Thomas felt like an intruder witnessing this moment, yet he couldn't look away. "The crown is heavy," Anne said, understanding in her voice. It was heavy for Elizabeth. It's heavy for Charles. It will be heavy for William. And yes, it's heavy for you. But it seems effortless for Catherine, does it? Anne's question carried knowing weight. Or does she simply hide her struggles better than you hide yours? Camilla looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean that Catherine has panic attacks before major events. That she sometimes locks herself in her room and cries from the pressure. That she calls her sister at midnight, wondering if she's good enough, strong enough, worthy enough." Thomas kept his expression neutral, but inside he was reeling. These were secrets shared in confidence, weapons deployed with surgical precision. Camilla's face showed shock. "I didn't know. Guess she doesn't advertise her pain." She was raised to keep calm and carry on, to never let them see you sweat. Just like you were raised to fight for every inch of ground, to never show weakness because it would be used against you. The comparison landed differently this time. Not as a weapon, but as a bridge. "You both carry wounds," Anne continued. "Different wounds from different wars, but wounds nonetheless. And instead of helping each other heal, you've been picking at each other's scars." Camilla covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Thomas had guarded these halls for over 2 decades. He'd seen dignified farewells and private breakdowns, which witnessed love and betrayal, stood silent during moments of joy and grief. But watching the queen consort cry in a palace corridor while Princess Anne offered unexpected compassion, this was something new. "I don't know how to fix this," Camilla said through her tears. "The damage is done. She'll never trust me now." "Then you start small." Anne's voice was firm but kind. "You stop undermining her suggestions in private meetings. You stop scheduling conflicting events. You stop letting your insecurity dictate your actions. If that's not enough, then you keep trying anyway. Because that's what being queen means." Elizabeth didn't earn respect by being perfect. She earned it by showing up day after day, year after year, and doing the work even when it was thankless. Camilla lowered her hands. Her makeup was ruined, mascara tracking down her cheeks, but something in her expression had shifted. The defensiveness had burned away, leaving something softer underneath. "I used to imagine," Camilla said quietly, "what it would be like when I finally had this role. I thought I'd feel complete, vindicated, but instead I feel more lost than ever, because you're trying to prove something to ghosts." Anne's observation was gentle but accurate. 2 people who will never approve no matter what you do. To memories and mistakes that can't be undone. Then what should I do? Stop trying to prove anything. Just be of service. Just do the work. Just treat Catherine and everyone else with the kindness you wish you'd received during your darkest days. The simplicity of the answer seemed to surprise Camilla. She laughed, a broken sound halfway between sob and genuine amusement. "It's that simple." "I didn't say it was simple. I said that's what you should do." Simple and easy are not the same thing. Thomas watched as Camilla pulled a handkerchief from her pocket and dabbed at her eyes. The motion was practiced, automatic. How many times had she hidden tears over the years? "Will you tell Catherine about this conversation?" Camilla asked. Anne considered the question. "That depends on what happens next. If I see genuine change, genuine effort, then no. This can stay between us. But if the patterns continue, they won't." Camilla's voice was firmer now. "I promise they won't. Don't promise me. Show Catherine. Show it through actions, not words." Camilla nodded slowly. She looked at Anne with something like gratitude mixed with residual fear. "Why did you do this?" Camilla asked. "You could have gone to Charles, made a formal complaint, turned the family against me. Instead, you confronted me directly, because I remember what it's like to be the daughter dismissed by critics. To be told I'm not feminine enough, not soft enough. Not enough, period." Anne's voice carried decades of old pain. "I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone. Not even you." The kindness in those words seemed to break something in Camilla. She stepped forward impulsively and embraced Princess Anne. For a heartbeat, Anne stood rigid, surprised. Then slowly, carefully, she returned the embrace. Thomas looked away then, giving them privacy in their shared moment of unexpected understanding. He stared at the portrait of Queen Elizabeth and wondered what she would have made of this scene. When he looked back, the two women had separated. They stood facing each other, not as adversaries, but as two people who'd survived impossible circumstances and found common ground in the wreckage. "Tomorrow," Anne said, "there's a charity luncheon. Catherine will be there. So will you. I suggest you find a moment to speak with her, privately." Camilla's expression showed panic. "And say what?" "The truth. That you've been struggling. That you want to do better. That you'd like to try again? What if she doesn't believe me? Then you keep trying until she does." They stood in silence for another moment. Then Camilla nodded, straightened her shoulders, and walked away. Her footsteps echoed down the corridor, each one carrying her toward an uncertain future. Anne watched her go, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and looked directly at Thomas. His heart stopped. "Thomas Blackwell," Princess Anne said, walking toward him. 23 years of service. Exemplary record. 3 commendations for discretion. He'd been trained for this, the moment when invisibility failed, when being caught witnessing something private had consequences. "Your Royal Highness," he said. Keeping his voice steady, you heard everything. It wasn't a question. Thomas knew better than to lie to Princess Anne. "Yes, ma'am." She studied him for a long moment. Thomas felt sweat forming at his collar despite the cool air. His career, his pension, his entire future balanced on whatever came next. "Good," Anne said finally. Thomas blinked. "Ma'am." I said good. I wanted a witness. She moved to stand beside him, both of them now staring at the same portrait of Queen Elizabeth. Someone whose word is beyond reproach. Someone who can testify, if needed, that I gave Camilla a chance to change course before escalating further. Understanding dawned. This hadn't been a private confrontation stumbled upon by accident. Princess Anne had known Thomas was stationed here, had chosen this corridor specifically. "You're using me as insurance," Thomas said before he could stop himself. Anne smiled slightly. "I'm protecting everyone involved, including you. If this conversation becomes public, which palace rumors eventually do, will be asked what you saw. Now you can answer truthfully without fear of contradiction." Strategy was brilliant. Thomas felt a new level of respect for the Princess Royal. "And if asked to testify?" "Tell the truth. That I confronted Camilla about her treatment of Catherine. That warnings were given. That an understanding was reached." Anne turned to face him fully. "But also that Camilla showed genuine remorse. That she accepted responsibility. That reconciliation is possible. Protecting her too," Thomas said, understanding fully now. "Even after everything, protecting the institution," Anne corrected. "Another scandal, another family war, another public breakdown, we can't afford it. The monarchy is already hanging by threads thinner than most people realize." Thomas had heard whispers. Declining approval ratings, younger generations, questioning relevance. The institution his family had served for 4 generations was under threat from forces no sword could fight. So this was mercy and strategy. Combined, he said. The best solutions usually are. Anne's expression softened. "I meant what I said to Camilla. I do believe she can be better. People aren't fixed points, Thomas. They're capable of growth, change, redemption, even when they've caused harm. And if she doesn't change, then we move to phase 2. Steele returned to Anne's voice. "But I'd rather not. Phase 2 is messier and more painful for everyone. Tomas didn't ask what Phase 2 entailed. Some things were better left unknown. "You've served this family well," Anne said. "Your discretion tonight will be noted and appreciated. But I need to ask Anne, I trust you to keep this conversation sealed until circumstances require otherwise." It was a test. Thomas understood that any hesitation, any qualification would be noted. "You have my word, Your Royal Highness." "On my honor and my family's service." Anne nodded, satisfied. "Good, because what happens tomorrow at that luncheon will determine everything. If Camilla reaches out to Catherine in good faith, we can begin to heal this wound. If she doesn't," she didn't finish the sentence. "She didn't need to." "May I ask a question, ma'am?" Thomas ventured. "You may? Why, Catherine? I mean no disrespect, but you've seen countless people enter this family, face scrutiny, endure hardship. What makes the Princess of Wales different?" Anne was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "'Cause she reminds me of someone," Anne said finally. "Someone who entered this family with hope and grace. Someone the institution chewed up and destroyed because we didn't protect her when we should have." Thomas understood. Immediately, Diana. The unspoken name hung between them like a ghost. "Was young then," Anne continued, her voice carrying old regret. "Caught up in my own struggles. I didn't see the warning signs until it was too late. I didn't speak up when I should have. I let palace politics and personal pride stop me from doing what was right." She turned to look at Thomas directly, and he saw pain in her eyes. "I won't make that mistake twice. Catherine is strong, yes. Capable, yes. But even the strongest people break under enough pressure. And I refuse to stand by and watch this family destroy another good woman because we're too caught up in our own dramas to protect her." The raw honesty in those words struck Thomas deeply. This wasn't about politics or strategy or protecting the institution. This was personal. This was Anne trying to atone for past failures by preventing future ones. "Diana would be proud," Thomas said quietly, "of what you did tonight." Anne's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, composing herself. "I hope so," she whispered. "God, I hope so." They stood in silence. Two people bound by duty and discretion, sharing a moment of unexpected vulnerability. "The luncheon tomorrow is at 1 o'clock, Anne said, switching back to business. "I'll be watching. Carefully." "As will I, ma'am. As will all of us who care about the family's well-being." Anne smiled genuinely then. The good guards, the loyal staff, the people who serve not for glory, but because they genuinely carry the true backbone of this institution. Never forget that. She began to walk away, then paused. "Thomas? One more thing? Yes, Your Royal Highness? If you ever see Catherine in distress, if you ever witness anyone treating her poorly, you come directly to me. Immediately. Protocol be damned." "Understood." "Ma'am," Anne nodded and continued down the corridor, her footsteps firm and purposeful. Thomas watched her go, feeling the weight of trust she'd placed in him. He resumed his post, standing straight and alert, eyes forward. But his mind was elsewhere, replaying the conversation. Understanding the stakes. Tomorrow's luncheon would reveal everything. Would Camilla extend an olive branch? Would Catherine accept it? Could two women, wounded by different wars, find common ground? Thomas didn't know. But he would be there, watching, ready to witness whatever came next. Because sometimes the most important moments in history happen in quiet corridors, witnessed only by those sworn to silence, until the time comes to speak. The charity luncheon arrived with typical English weather: gray skies, threatening rain, wind rattling the windows of the grand hall. Thomas had been reassigned to the event, a move he suspected was not coincidental. Princess Anne had ensured her witness would be present, the room filled with dignitaries. Donors and press photographers corralled behind velvet ropes. Catherine arrived first, looking elegant in a navy dress that photographed beautifully. She smiled at staff, greeted guests with warmth, played her role with practiced ease. But Thomas saw what the cameras couldn't, the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twisted her wedding ring. The quick glance toward the entrance every few minutes, she was nervous, anticipating something. Thomas wondered if Princess Anne had warned her, given her a heads up about what might happen today. Camilla arrived 15 minutes later, Charles at her side. The king seemed oblivious to any undercurrent, greeting attendees with genuine enthusiasm. But Camilla's eyes swept the room until they found Catherine. The two women locked gazes across the crowded hall. Thomas held his breath. Camilla said something to Charles, who nodded and moved toward a group of sponsors. Then she began walking slowly but deliberately. Toward Catherine, the room seemed too quiet, though Thomas knew that was impossible. Conversations continued around them. People laughed, clinked glasses, posed for photographs. But to Thomas, the only thing that mattered was watching these two women approach each other. Catherine's expression remained neutral, professionally pleasant, but her knuckles whitened around her champagne glass. They met in front of a large window overlooking the gardens. Rain had started to fall, droplets racing down the glass behind them like tears. Thomas positioned himself closer, adjusting his stance as if checking the perimeter. Close enough to observe? Close enough to intervene if needed. Camilla spoke first. Thomas couldn't hear the words, but he watched Catherine's face. Surprise flickered across her features, then confusion. Then something that looked like cautious hope. Catherine responded, her voice too low to carry. Camilla nodded, said something else. This time Catherine's eyes widened. Was that an apology? A real one? The conversation continued. Neither woman smiled, but the tension began to ease. Catherine's shoulders relaxed fractionally. Camilla's hands, which had been nervously clutching her purse, settled at her sides. Then Camilla did something that made several nearby guests turn and stare. She reached out and gently touched Catherine's hand. Not a handshake. A touch of connection, of shared understanding, of tentative bridge-building. Catherine looked down at their joined hands. For a terrible moment, Thomas thought she might pull away, might reject the gesture entirely, but she didn't. Catherine's other hand came up, covering Camilla's, the 3 hands older and younger. Wounded and healing rested together for just a moment. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Princess Anne stood across the room, pretending to examine an auction item. But Thomas saw her watching through the reflection in a glass display case. He saw the smallest nod of approval, the minute relaxation in her posture. Phase 2 would not be necessary. Not today. The two women separated, returning to their respective roles. But something had shifted. Thomas could see it in how Catherine carried herself afterward, lighter somehow, as if a weight she'd been bearing had lessened. In how Camilla engaged with guests, less desperate to prove herself, more genuine in her interactions. The luncheon continued successfully. Speeches were made. Donations pledged. Photographs taken that would appear in tomorrow's papers, showing the royal family united and gracious. None of those photographs would capture what Thomas had witnessed. The private apology, the tentative acceptance, the moment when two women chose bridge building over warfare. Later, as the event wound down, Thomas found himself once again in Princess Anne's vicinity. She didn't acknowledge him directly, but as she passed, she said quietly, "Well done." The words weren't for him, he knew. They were for Catherine, for Camilla, for everyone who'd chosen the harder path of reconciliation over the easier path of continued conflict. Thomas maintained his post until the last guest departed, until the hall emptied and staff began breaking down tables. Only then did he allow himself to truly process what he'd witnessed over the past 24 hours. He'd seen a princess issue a final warning with the force of absolute conviction. He'd watched a queen consort break down and admit her failures. He'd witnessed two women find unexpected common ground and shared pain. And he'd observed the tentative first steps toward healing a wound that could have torn the family apart. These moments wouldn't appear in history books. No commemorative plates would be made. No official statements would be released. The world would never know how close they'd come to another royal scandal, another family implosion, another tragedy. But Thomas knew, and Princess Anne knew, and Camilla and Catherine knew. Sometimes, The most important battles are fought in quiet corridors and resolved in whispered conversations. Sometimes courage means admitting fault instead of defending territory. Sometimes strength is measured not by dominance, but by the willingness to be vulnerable. As Thomas left Windsor Castle that evening, rain still falling steadily, he thought about all the secrets these walls held, all the dramas and reconciliations, the loves and betrayals, the moments that shaped history without ever making headlines. He thought about Diana, the unspoken ghost whose memory had motivated Princess Anne's intervention. Would things have been different if someone had confronted her tormentors decades ago? If someone had drawn a line and said enough? Thomas would never know. But he knew that tonight. Because of Princess Anne's courage and Camilla's humility and Catherine's grace, history had shifted course. One confrontation in a hallway, one warning delivered with icy precision, one apology offered with genuine remorse, one acceptance given despite justified hurt. These were the moments that saved families. These were the acts that preserved institutions. These were the choices that determined whether legacies ended in tragedy or triumph. Thomas walked to his car, his duty complete, his secret secure. Tomorrow, he would return to his post. He would stand invisible in corridors, watching and waiting, protecting and serving. And if he ever again witnessed someone threatening Catherine's well-being, he knew exactly what to do. He would go straight to Princess Anne because some warnings, once given, remain in force forever. And some guardians, whether they wear crowns or uniforms, never stop protecting those who deserve protection. The rain continued to fall as Thomas drove home through Windsor's darkened streets. Behind him, the castle stood illuminated against the night sky, its windows glowing with warm light. Inside those walls, secrets were kept and stories unfolded. Inside those walls, a family was learning slowly, painfully, but genuinely how to choose healing over harm. And Thomas Blackwell, Royal Guard for 23 years, carried with him the knowledge that he'd witnessed something rare and precious, a moment when people chose to be better than they had to be, a moment when grace defeated pride, a moment worth protecting forever.